Can you guys feel the energy in this room? It's pretty cool. It's taken me 3 years to get here. We originally, with Uvashi and Shiv, we talked about doing this, and there's been something that has gotten in the way every year. Very important things. My wife's illness and her eventual death, and many kinds of things that were tragedies, but that we kind of work our way through. But it's finally kind of culminated in actually being here. And it didn't hit me until this morning. And this morning, I got in late last night, and then I got up this morning, and I came and I got that little packet of materials that you guys all have. And so I'm looking through the materials, and I look through, and the first one I get is the speakers, and I go, oh, cool, oh, wow. Then I saw some old friends, Sujeev, and some other people that, I said, oh, this is neat, and I said, this is cool to be a part of these speakers. I'm pretty, I got a little ego hit there, right? And then I got to look at the piece on all of you. And I'll tell you, I sat down this morning and I read every one of your bios. Okay? And I just said, I had this sense. I loved the piece when you looked at what did I change my opinion on last year. Some of those were so profound, and I just looked and I said, wow, these kids are so advanced. I am much prouder to be in this room with you than I am the rest of the speakers. But don't tell them that, okay? Marvelous. The attitudes that you have, who you are, and the potential that you have, all right, at this point, all right, in your lives. So what I want to do today is I'm all about tools, and so we're going to talk a lot about tools for raising your level of consciousness, okay? And I want to start out by doing a couple of tools, okay? One of them is I want you to all stand up. And I want you to take a big, deep breath. I want you to go through the nose and okay? All right, again. And then, and then again, all right? We're going to use this tool throughout the day today, all right? And it's one that is incredibly important in terms of you remembering to be conscious, because that's what it's going to take here, all right? What happens is that you're all on automatic pilot. You're very busy being who you are. And there's not consciousness there. But we can do things like reconnect with our breath, because it's always there as a reminder. And just that ability to, let's do it again, take a deep breath. The ability to put a little in our lives at that moment and say, I'm here right now, and the is letting go. It's saying, it's okay, no matter what I'm in, no matter how pressured I am, no matter how busy I am, no matter what's happening in terms of the relationship with the important people in my lives or even the unimportant people, and I can let go and recenter. And we're going to do that as we go through. You got 3 hours with me, you guys. Okay? Yeah, you probably don't have an attention span that lasts any more than 15 minutes, so we're going to have to mix it up a little bit, okay? I'm going to use you as my guinea pigs, and we're going to do a whole lot of exercises where you're actually going to have to relate to each other, okay? Now, another one I want to do is, have you ever gone to a speech, right? And in that speech, somebody tells a joke to start out the speech, yeah? Do you know why they do that? Because what we want to do when we have an audience of people is to connect. And one way that we can connect is if we can create emotional feelings, okay, that you all share. So I don't have any jokes. That's the problem, right? Because I'm kind of a boring guy, right? And so what we're going to have to do is we're just going to have to laugh, okay? So what I want you to do is to just laugh, okay? Come on. Come on, everybody, come on. I got to do this. Let's go. Come on, get into it. Laugh. Come on. Look at the neighbor and look at how funny they look. Oh, woo! Stop. And feel. What does it feel like? Wow. Be sensitive to what's happening around you. We just did something that's very interesting, okay? All right? We shared an emotion, right? Now, some of you didn't share. Some of you did a little mind thing, and they said, well, this is stupid. I'm not going to laugh. All right? And what we want to do is we want to watch what's going on in this brain, okay? Now, we also spent 45 seconds, okay, laughing. What that did was it created a new neural pathway in our brain. Or if we laugh a lot, it just reinforced that neural pathway that's already there, right? And then it's easier for us to laugh. We practice laughing. Now, we start out and it's fake, right? Okay? Right? All right, it's fake. But then what happens is we start to laugh at ourselves laughing, okay? And then it becomes real. We can take a mental state, okay, and make it a real emotion. We do it all the time. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how this thing works and what we can do. Now, before we sit down, one more big breath. Okay? Get nervous. I'm up here. I'm doing this for me, you guys. Okay? That's because I'm all nervous about, wow, all these kids are so brilliant. You might sit down. I'm going to sit down too. Now, I asked to have some cushions so that I could sit like this because I spent so many years as a monk that I feel a little bit more grounded when I'm down here. We are going to do some things that are meditations, but I want to, for the purposes of our work together, I want to redefine meditation, okay? Because way too many people think that this is meditation, okay? They have to sit cross-legged and you sit up and you breathe and you concentrate on your breath or you concentrate on a nimitta, burning candle or something like that. I want to shift that. Meditation is any time that you get absorbed. Okay? Any time that you get so concentrated in terms of what you're doing that you lose your sense of self. That is a meditation. Okay? Now, all of you have places in your lives where you get absorbed, and where you get absorbed are those places where the real kind of energy, the real kind of wow, where it all comes alive for you. When we begin to master something, when we begin to point and really kind of be, and it can be while you're skiing down the mountain and you just kind of hit that perfect thing and all of a sudden there's no you. Maybe you're a tennis player. Right? Now, when we start learning to play tennis, we're not any good because we have to use our head to play tennis. We got move the arm over there, do the backhand. Now do I do a backhand or do a front hand? But if I'm doing that in my head, if that is going on in my head, I'm not a very good tennis player. But the better that I get, the more and more that I connect, all right? The more absorbed I get into the game, I begin to play that game intuitively. There is no intellect that's going on in that game. It is just tennis or it is if I'm a concert pianist, all right? And even if I'm not a concert pianist, but every once in a while I practice, and then I get to a place to where I can play that song and not be there, and boom, that's what actually propels me to be a better pianist, to continue in that discipline. When we get to the place to where we can get absorbed in what we're doing, so much so that we lose connection with self, okay? When we do that, that's a meditation. That's when we've mastered something. We get to that place to where it becomes a part of us. We also, in that point, reach a different state of consciousness. Right? I want you to think about what you love to do. Okay, all right. Where is it that you get that hit? Where is it that, because that's what we want to look at and say, wow, how do I work with that and make it bigger? How do I begin to take what I've learned in that particular context and begin to use it in other contexts? Okay? So I work with senior level corporate executives a lot. And all of them have great skills. They master at some level. So maybe they go into a client interaction, and in that client interaction, they are paying such close, undivided attention to that client, all right, that they actually get to a place to where they lose connections to themselves, and they're incredibly sensitive, and they know that if they say it this way and it gets kind of the wrong nuanced emotion, and then they say it this way, and there's this thing that happens, all right? And they're incredibly good at doing that in a client context. But take them outside of that client context, okay, and they lose the skill. So they don't do that with their wife and their family. Okay? They don't do that with their colleagues and subordinates and their superiors, all right? Because they learned it in a context and then have not been able to take it out of that context to be able to make it manifest in the other parts of their lives, all right? Now we do that by beginning to start to create a mind that more easily gets absorbed. And that's what conscious leadership is all about. Now, if I can work this, do I? Bum, bum, I do that, right? That? Hey, who's that guy? Oh, there we go. I think maybe, okay, we're back. Here we go. Okay. There's something probably that we better do before we get into this. Let me give you a little bit about me, because you're probably sitting there and saying, wow, why should I listen to this crazy guy that's up there? He's got, he's fat, he's got long hair, he's old. Okay, those are three criteria that probably eliminate me anyway. But, there are a few lessons that I've learned in my life that may be useful for you. And so this is a little bit of a personal preamble before we get into all this other stuff. I was born and raised, if you put your finger in the middle of the United States, okay, right, where your finger is where I was born, all right? The geographic center of the United States is a place called Omaha, Nebraska, okay? I prefer to call it Omaha. Also, Warren Buffett came from there, okay? So we have a couple of, but I was an Iowa farm boy, okay? Born and raised on a farm, moved into town of, 400, 500 people, and did not have a very big parameter in terms of what my life was to be, but always was interested and curious. And somehow out of that, when I went to college, and there was never, ever a plan for my life. I mean, I would think about things. When I went to college, I thought, oh, I'd like to be a teacher, because that's really the only role models I had was my teachers, and they were kind of interesting. And I thought, well, wow, that'd be fun. Maybe what I'll do is I'll go be a teacher. And so I started out in education. And then as I took different courses, other things kind of interested me. And also, I was a child of the 60s, which meant when I went to university, there was a whole different world going on at American universities, because we had a war in Vietnam, which if they would have drafted me as a soldier out of high school, I'd have been a great soldier. I'd have done all the right things, taken all the right orders, and been a good Iowa farm boy, recruit and draftee. The problem is they let me go to college. And in college, then all of a sudden, you get a different side. Like all of you, as you begin to look at what have I changed my opinion on, okay, in the last year. My freshman year of college, I kind of changed my opinion about the whole world and about everything in it, all right, because of a lot of things. One was a war that I didn't believe in, but I didn't know that I didn't believe in it until I really was able to kind of investigate and was curious and looked at all of those different things. And then how do you begin to create political movements, and what do you do, and how do you, and I campaigned for Senator Eugene McCarthy, a lost cause in the American elections, but knocking on doors, because I was a kind of a nice suit and tie guy and not one of kind of the hippies that really manned the phone because their hair was too long. And it was a children's crusade, but it was really against the war in Vietnam. And out of that also came the introduction into a world where most everything that I got in terms of what my parents believed in actually kind of got morphed, all right, got changed. All right. I was at the Chicago Convention in 1968 and was caught in a crossfire when all of the police came in. Most of the people that were there were kids like me that had campaigned for Eugene McCarthy, had camped out, were nice kids, really trying to begin a part of a political process. And then there were 400 or 500, there may be 4,000 of us, and there were 400 or 500 yippies that were kind of, you know, ranting and raving and doing all kinds, and going to go into the floor and disturb the whole process. And we got caught in the middle of that, because when the police came in, they came in at all sides, and kind of everybody was the same. And I remember people holding their hands up and saying, hey, hold it, I'm not doing anything, and them getting beat up and clubbed by police. And, you know, and at the end of that, I ended up in Cook County Jail. now this is, I'm an Iowa farm boy, okay? All right? I'm in jail. My parents have never known anybody that was in jail, and now I'm in jail. I'm their son. I'm certainly not going to tell them that I'm in jail, all right? So I can't even tell my parents, right? So I waited in Cook County Jail for about a week, and it was pretty traumatic, because they do all kinds of things to you in jail. All right, like, you know, threaten to throw you in with the hardened criminals, where if they do throw you in, then people get gang raped at night and all. You know, that didn't happen to me, but the threat was there. And you kind of go through cell shakes, and it was all crazy. And eventually, my university raised the money to bail me out of Cook County Jail, all right? So when I came out of Cook County Jail, before that I had been the chairman of the Young Republicans committee in my university. When I came out of jail, in the counterculture community, I was a celebrity, all right? So that really completely changed my world, right? And that was also a time when there was a lot of shift in consciousness. Psychedelic drugs were legal. I started to work with psychology, and eventually did my postdoctoral work at the Menninger Foundation. One of the first people that came after I was there was an Indian guru by the name of Swami Rama, started the Himalayan Foundation. Swami Rama was a very interesting character because he had the ability to control his autonomic functions, even in a laboratory situation. So we'd have him at the Medinger Foundation. We'd hook him up, to, a cardio machine, and he would make his heart fibrillate and go, and then he'd die, okay? And then he would spend about 1 minute with no heartbeat, and then he'd start the heartbeat again and laugh, and just, impossible stuff. And there were other gurus that could do it, but they couldn't do it in the laboratory, right? Incredible stuff. I worked with Elmer and Alice Green in biofeedback in the 60s, that early stuff, right? And it was like amazing when we got to a place to where you could be here and there were receptors that could pick up alpha waves that would be across the room, and you could do alpha waves and you'd turn on a green light, or you'd do a beta wave and you'd turn on a red light, all right? And you could kind of play with this and turn on red lights and green lights and yellow light and da-da-da. So anyway, one day we rigged it up, and I was actually kind of good at this, so we rigged it up so you could do tones with it, right? And so I could do row, row, row your boat with my brain. I could sing it with my brain. Incredible stuff. Now this is the 60s. We're so much farther along than this. But it was the kind of thing that just shifted your worldview in the same way that all of your worldviews are being shifted now, okay? And what it did was it threw me into such a tizzy that from then on, I have had career goals, but I've never been attached to those career goals. But I still work towards them. I still do today. But what I learned was that I believe in this kind of destiny, if you will. And destiny never happens in the direction that we think it's going to come. It happens at the peripheries. Oftentimes I work with corporate leaders that are so myopically, tuned to this is what I have to accomplish. This is the goal, and they are so narrow-minded in that goal that they lose peripheral vision. And destiny happens for us at the peripheries. Doesn't mean don't have goals. It means don't get so attached to your goals that you can't feel and connect with other things in your life that may take you in a different direction that you never thought of. How can an Iowa farm boy end up in a retreat center in Thailand working with some of the biggest corporations and the most famous people in the world? How does that happen? It didn't happen by plan. Don't do your lives with a plan. Allow destiny to work for you. Because these side tangential things that we actually kind of feel rather than being a part of our intellect. Most of us, when we build our careers, we build it on the basis of what we are supposed to do. We base it on our intellect, on, oh, I need to do this to get this, to get this, to get this, to get this, and then you're kind of down that whole path. Look, most of you were probably raised same way I was raised. I don't know, maybe I hope different, but I probably don't think so. But when I was raised, the whole thing was, look, here's the way you get success. You work hard, right? Then you're successful, and then you can be happy, right? Did anybody else get raised that way? Raise your hand if you did, yeah? Okay, some, all right? How's that working for you? Because that's a good formula to never get to happy, all right? Because what you do is you work really hard, that's all you get. You get hard work, and then you know what happens, all right, is you get to the end of that hard work, and then it's there, right, and you achieve something. Most people in terms of success, as corporate executives, we know this is just straight psychology. Do you know how long they stay in the feeling of success? Right? We spent 45 seconds laughing. That fired a new neural pathway, right? For people feeling success, okay? Feeling it as a feeling, not interrupting it with thoughts, but a feeling, you get 5 to 7 seconds, right? And then what you do is you move the goalpost and say, well, okay, yeah, we got this success, but we need to do this, and we got to do this, and pretty soon you're off on being drive and strive. You're off on working hard again, and so and then you're training your mind. All the time you're in training, you guys. You're training your mind to drive and strive, okay? Now, you'll never be enough, you'll never find contentment, and the goalpost always moves. Welcome to your life. If you want to be happy now, all right? Start to practice happiness. It's a mental state. We're going to talk about how you use mental states, all right? I got fascinated by psychology, became a therapist. I happened to have something that was a gift that made me a really good therapist, so I could pretty much do what I wanted, whether it was college teaching or it has been a wonderful something that actually I learned from someone, and I still have a great gratitude toward her. It's the best therapist I have ever met. Her name was Ellie Katz, this little short Jewish woman that used to just beat me up all the time, all right? But she taught me something that I will be grateful for on the day I die. A wonderful, wonderful mentor. It's one of the things that I hopefully can maybe pay back to her, this incredible gift that she gave me that has continued to do these things for me in my life. All right? So came to Singapore, ended up in Asia for all kinds of reasons. I was at one time the chief of staff for the governor of the state of New York, chief of staff for the governor of the state of Kansas. I taught at State University of New York. Had a political compromise I wouldn't make, was left with nothing to do. My cousin was getting married in Asia. I came to Asia to hang out with my cousin and do the wedding, and loved Asia. So maybe in a past life I was here, but there was something that just clicked. Ended up, doing things here. Did my Chase gurus in India for a couple of years. I sat at the feet of most of your great gurus at one time or another. And then ended up in Singapore, started a private practice. That private practice, Singapore was an expensive place to be, hard to do it on psychotherapy with a big office and all kinds of things. So had groups that were, it's lonely at the top, and for senior level corporate people. And those groups evolved into the Asian Leadership Institute at about 1980, all right, 1982. And from then on, I started moving into more and more corporate work, but still using the psychoanalytic skills. And I remember about 15 or 20 years later, somebody said something about executive coaching, and I said, oh, well, that's a good thing to call it. I'd been doing it for a decade. And so now I guess I can kind of call myself an executive coach, but I'm not even sure that that's exactly the right nomenclature anymore for the kinds of things that we're doing, because what we are doing is basically trying to look at how do you raise consciousness, okay? And so that's what we want to do in terms of conscious leadership. Started out with a mission, and when the Asian Leadership Institute started, the mission statement has been the same since 1982. There was a very big realization even back then that real power rested with corporations and with big businesses and family-owned businesses, and that was really kind of a place that if you wanted to really impact and do something in the world, that was a place that we needed to impact. That if you can raise the consciousness level of corporates, all right, based on doing it with the leaders in corporations, that maybe we can, in this race, because I believe honestly that we are in a race, and that you guys are at the cutting edge of that race, which is if we don't develop a new level of consciousness as a human species, we will eliminate ourselves from this planet. The planet will be fine without us, all right? But we will kill ourselves. We're way behind in this, all right? In my opinion, we're way behind. We can't continue to do things the way that we are doing things now. It does not work. You look at the myriad of problems that are out there, and we are not developing the level of change and fast enough to be able to deal with the problems that you guys are all going to be faced with in terms of your careers and your life. And this isn't something about, I used to think it was, we got to organize a movement and make things change in that way and all kinds of things. And I think along the line in the 60s and in the 70s, we began to realize that it's not about the externals, it's about the internals. How do I shift my consciousness? And then once I begin to shift my consciousness, how do I begin to support other people in their consciousness shift? And that's what today is going to be all about. Right? So first, it's a mission, and I'd like you to join me. I mean, it's the same mission that I think all of you are on, and we may articulate this differently, but all of you are here because you want to make a real difference in the world. That always starts in any kind of conscious leadership, any kind of bringing wisdom, begins to mean that we've got to do the internal work. And so that's the process that we're in. Now we needed to create the right environment. So we created a purpose-built facility in Chiang Mai, Thailand, that's for doing coaching and for doing training, facilitator training, and other kinds of things, so that we kind of have for a community a little bit of a clubhouse. Okay? These are, over the past 30 years, some of the clients. About 25% of our clients really want to maintain being anonymous. Especially family businesses like to have that anonymousness. And so probably 25% of our clients we can't even put on here, right? This is how we coach, and this is the beginning of this internal process that I want to begin to kind of help you to understand. Okay? If you look at there, you see the brain, and you see that the cortex over there, which is the memory, all right? We have a view that the single most limiting thing that you have ever done to yourself is create a personality. And that's who you think you are, okay? And you are addicted to that personality. You actually think that that personality is real. And so what you do is you have created a reality, okay? And you project that reality out onto the world. And of course, because you're human, you have confirmation bias. So you begin to see that which confirms your reality. So if I like you, I see all the good things you do. And if I don't like you, I see all the bad things you do. All right? What we do is we don't see the things around us clearly. They are all filtered through our personality. You are right now in the process of solidifying your personality. And if we can catch you at this stage, okay, I think that you're going to save yourself just a whole lot of trouble, a whole lot of craziness moving forward. What I want you to do is to get less attached to who you think you are, because it's the most limiting thing that you've ever done to yourself. How many people in here, raise your hand, who can run a marathon in here? How many? Okay. Right, you guys? Crap. Every single person in this room can run a marathon. People on wheelchairs run marathons, okay? People with no legs run marathon. 97-year-old guys run marathons, all right? We should be saying, yes, I can run a marathon. I may choose not to, but I can run a marathon, all right? But that's not what our personality does to us. What our personality does to us is it starts to put can'ts in there, right? It's not a can't. We can, but we choose not to. We do that with everything. Whenever you say, oh, I can't do that, okay, you're actually speaking from your personality and limiting yourself because many of the things that you think you can't do, you can do. Look, your personality is all these dualities, okay? It's the rights and wrongs and goods and bads and shoulds and shouldn'ts and likes and don't likes and fair and just and all of those things that are dualities, that are judgments. That's what makes up your personality, all right? And so when you begin to do things like you identify yourself as I hate asparagus, right? Right? And how many of you hated asparagus when you were little kids, but then later on when you grew up, you liked asparagus and something changed, right? But the harder that we hold on to I hate asparagus, okay, the more that begins to define us, right? So you define yourself through the limitations of who you think you are. Now, the reason that we create this personality is two things. One is we don't want to be alone. We have an existential thing that says, well, I don't, and I want somebody to be in charge. And so what we do is we create the illusion of a personality to be in charge so that we can actually have kind of a little conversation with our personality, which, by the way, you do all the time. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Okay? But the other one is that we do it, okay, for continuity. We want to be the same tomorrow as we were yesterday so that people know who we are, right? And we also want people in our lives to be consistent so that they're not all over. It's the problem with adolescence. Your parents probably have already been through this with you, where you start to change and they don't know who you are because there isn't any consistency in your personality. And that's what happens when we're building a personality because we're trying on new behaviors all the time. And we try them on, we say, oh, does this one work? Well, no, okay, well, yeah, that one works, I'll program that in. I like it, that's me. We inherit a lot of those programs, but we begin to solidify this thing called a personality. When you're working in corporations, believe me, every time you introduce change, you're going to get resistance. Every time you try to change, you're going to get resistance because that's what your personality is for, all right? It's to give you continuity. So if you want to, go on a diet, if you want to, begin to learn how to ride bucking broncos, or if you want to do whatever it is that you want to do in your life, you're going to have to overcome the resistance of your personality who says you can't run a marathon. All right? Just automatically comes up, right? So here we are, and we are stuck in this programmed and patterned personality that actually resides in the same place as memory and autonomic functions in our brain, all right? Now, the way that communicates to us, okay, is through an internal dialogue, all right? And all of us you have an internal dialogue that's going on right now, all right? You're going do, and you can listen to it if you want. You're probably saying, oh, this guy's a real jerk. What is he talking about? All right, oh, I'm getting bored. Now I'm going to check out. Oh, man, boy, that girl's really cute. Okay, what am I going to do here? All right, so we have all of these things that actually take us out of where we are at this moment that are just kind of going on in our head, all right? You want to listen to your personality? Okay, let's do that for a minute, okay? What I want you to do is to just sit up straight, okay? And we're going to just do a simple meditation. We're going to concentrate on our breath. Now, we think that that's a real simple thing to do, and all of you, I suspect many of you have tried meditation, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to do it right now, and we're going to check in, and we're going to see what the personality is saying to us, because we're kind of bashing it a little bit now, right? Okay, so it may want to do something here. And so we're concentrating on our breath, right? And just breathing in, and maybe breathe out of your mouth. Let's do 3 times. Let's do our little ah, huh? So just a minute, just so we kind of tune in to that internal dialogue that's constantly going on in our lives. But what happens is that we stop paying attention to that internal dialogue. So it's there, and there's a part of us that's listening to it, and as we listen to it, it defines our reality. Okay? It's always going on. Now, psychology, we know a little bit about this internal dialogue. Actually, we know a lot about it. We know that your internal dialogue is primarily judgmental. Okay? So what you're doing is you're going through your day, and you probably had a couple of judgments while we were just doing that little meditation. This is good, this is cool. Oh, I don't like this, I don't understand. But that's what happens to us. Right? We got this thing that goes, oh, that's beautiful. Oh, well, no, I don't like that. Oh, he's cool. I like that. Oh, we shouldn't do that. Oh, that's not fair. That mind is going like this. Do. All right? We also know it's primarily judgmental. We also know that the judgments have a huge tendency to be negative. All right? Now, that's probably comes from when we were hunter-gatherers, and, if you were too optimistic, you said, there's no saber-toothed tiger behind that bush, right? And there was, and you only have to be wrong once, and then that kind of takes it out of the gene pool. And so we are by nature somewhat conscious, and that translates into sometimes being quite negative in terms of this internal dialogue, even though there's no saber-toothed tigers anymore, all right? But we still inherit that. Now, what happens is that because that internal dialogue is judgmental, we then also start to cast ourselves, because here's what happens. We wake up in the morning and that dialogue starts, and we're think all day long, and and we think, and finally we go to bed and we can't even stop the thinking sometimes, and we can't sleep, and we think, and yeah, well, now think about it. Okay, who's the star of that show? Huh? Who's the star? What's all this about? It's all about me, right? Oops. Yeah. It's all about me. And so what we do is we start to believe that we are the arbitrators of truth, right? I am right. And when I speak like this is the truth. Well, hey, all truth is relative, right? It's all relative. Your truth is no bigger or better, or your reality is no bigger and better than anybody else's. But we all come from this place, and in fact, we reinforce each other and are reinforced by our external environments to actually come off like we are the arbitrators of truth. You guys have done all this huge amount of education, right? You're learning all of this stuff. You're going to have numbers and letters by your name and all kinds of things, and then you're going to know, right? That's what we think. We think that our job is to know. Okay? We think that our job is to know. Actually, our job is to not know. Okay? When we don't know, we're in a different mental state, right? And we are open and receptive to learning to new things. We can listen to people. We can be more fluid. We can be more flexible. But the minute that you get into the place to where I know, okay, you contract. Okay? And then you're not open and receptive for new things, right? The other thing that we know here is that if you are caught in your personality, all right, and then that judgment piece is there, you begin to kind of just do behaviors that were programmed in a long time ago that make no sense to what's going on in your lives right now. All right? For instance, your age, how are you guys, 19, 20 years old, and you suddenly realize that, hey, if I get a little bit rude and aggressive, if I push a little bit harder on the things that I want, I kind of get what I want, right? And so I can become a little bit aggressive about things, and that actually is good because I get more of the things that I want. And that gets programmed in, all right? And so 20 years later, when you're in a corporation and you go in and you're rude to somebody, or you basically kind of go in and they have something that you want, and so you do your personality thing, all right? And they get defensive because they label you as rude and aggressive, right? You didn't wake up in the morning and say, this morning I want to go in and be rude and aggressive to my boss, okay? All right? It's already programmed in. There's no conscious decision to do that. It all happens as a pre-program. And unless we shift this so that we become conscious, that program stays there. All right? So what happens to us is that we get caught. All right? Now what we want to do is we want to create, all right, a shift in that and go to observer. And I think we'll get back here. We've talked a little bit about being conscious and about personality, right? The next part of that is being the observer, and the observer is taking a step back so that what I do is personality is here, all right? I take a step back and I observe my personality, and as I observe my personality, I begin to see, all right? I'm separate. So now when behaviors arise, I can actually see those behaviors and I'm conscious enough to make a change, all right? So we want to move into the observer mode. Then we move into observer mode with other people and we begin to see them as personalities and we begin to work with them, all right, in a way where we see people as being who they are. We also are programmed emotionally. All right? And so we have emotional patterns that arise. We need to be aware of those emotional patterns, and we're going to use a process here of being expanded and contracted and look at that and feel that, all right, as one of the tools that we're going to use in terms of becoming more conscious. So basically, this is a practice model that we will come back to, but it's basically how we begin to work on being more conscious. So we created Team Up in 2013. It was the experience from the Asian Leadership Institute along with neurobiology and e-learning, put all of that together to a program that basically is a 10-week program that raises consciousness. That triad is done in groups of 3. We're going to give you a taste of triads today. All right, and it's basically done with a little bit of work kinds of experiences, a little bit of readings, a little bit of videos, but the heart of it is working with two other people aside from yourself on your own process and your own development. It's done as a team because for most of us, we are much better at doing things when we have responsibilities in terms of other people. So you may be so busy that you don't have time to do a whole lot of things, but if other people are dependent upon you doing it, that's an incentive that allows us to overcome our laziness, okay? And so we've found that doing your growth and development stuff in teams is much more powerful than you trying to do this individually, all right? And today what we want to do is give you a little bit of taste of the triads. And so one of the things that I want to do is to start to have you guys begin to do this work, and I want you to do it in relation to triads. So what I want you to do is find 2 people. I want everybody to stand up, okay? Now you're going to move around, okay? So I want you to start to find people that you don't know very well, okay? You guys don't know each other very well, okay? Don't do this. Move around, but I want you to get in groups of 3, okay? If you've got a group of 3, raise your hand so we know you're okay. All right, we got a group of 3 over there. Come on. All right, got a group. Come on, where are our 3s? We got 3 over there. All right. Now you can move the chairs around. But I want you to get to a place to where you can relate to each other. So go ahead and move the chairs around so that you get a little group of 3. Yep. Move the chairs, get a group of 3, right? Have you got, need one other person? You got 3, okay. Just form a little triangle somewhere. You guys need a partner? You got one over here, okay. Okay, is everybody, who doesn't have a group? Okay, we got a whole bunch over here. Start to grab each other and get 3s. Okay, are we finding, just move the chairs around, sit in groups of 3, be able to relate to each other. I want you to also be able to look at each other. Okay. Anybody that's missing a triad? What? No, 3. 3. All the exercises are designed at 3. You guys aren't as smart as I thought. This is the longest I've ever taken to have a group divide into 3. Okay? I want you to, first thing to do in your triad group, now you guys are trying to cheat and get into the group of 6. Okay, good. All right, good. Okay. Okay, groups of 3. I want that group of 3, choose a timekeeper. All right, one of the 3 of you is a timekeeper. Will the timekeepers in every group raise their hand? Choose somebody. Come on, let's go. Timekeeper. Who's the timekeeper? Okay, good. All right. Now, each person, all right, is going to spend in the timekeeper. Timekeeper, by the way, has to have a watch. I hope that's okay. Right? What we're going to do is we're going to do the trailer of your life. Okay? So what I want you to do is to spend 4 or 5 minutes telling the 2 other people about your life, the trailer. That's the main events that have shaped you, but also that have shaped your personality, okay? Who you are. You know, maybe you know, so that what we're doing is we're just kind of taking a broad scope of your life. Now, the other 2 people are going to listen, okay? But they're not going to interpret, okay? Now, this is a hugely important one because if we are actually going to be useful in terms of supporting other people's practice, we need to learn to listen without that judgment piece in our personality kicking in, right? You're going to want to comment on all these stories. You're going to want to interpret this story. Oh, yeah, I understand that because my mother did that to me too. Okay? All right? We just got to get in there with our own stuff. But what we're doing is we are doing a straight listening process today. Then one person, and this will change around the group, one person is going to repeat back. And you're going to spend 2 minutes, okay, repeating back with no interpretations and no evaluations. You're just going to repeat back the life trailer, okay? Now, the other person that is listening, okay, they're going to be listening for and giving feedback to you in terms of your repeat back and whether your repeat back actually did do interpretations and evaluations, okay? So everybody has a job in this, okay? And then it moves to the next person, tell their story. Another person's the repeat back person. The other one's listening to the repeat back and going to do, all right, an analysis of the repeat back, okay? Have you got it? Are we all on board with this one? You know what to do? All right, you can correct misinterpretations. If somebody said, you know, you're born in the wrong place, you can tell them that's not right, and then you switch roles, okay? So we begin now. Will the timekeepers start the time? 4 to 5 minutes, cut off, do the repeat back 2 or 3 minutes, all right? Then head to the next one, then we'll share experience. Okay, go. I'll start you on the...
Maybe I can change the out again.
Oh, here we go. Can you guys take care of this girl for me?
Okay, we have another person, but we
Okay.
have a third person. Can we be
Oh,
four
you
of
have a
us
third
then?
person. No, the other one is gone
Wait,
for a
I-
minute. Okay.
we will find for-
All right, well, we'll go find you another group then.
Yeah,
Come on,
we'll
let's
find
go.
you a group.
And you're going to do more work. You just started working in triads. We got 2 more hours left of this, so everybody will get their chance to reconnect, okay? What? Yeah, no, stay in your triad groups. Do not move back, all right? We're going to be working in triads for the rest of our time together, okay? No, same triads. We're going to be going deeper. Okay. All right. Now, did you have time as a triad to be able to talk about the experience? All right? Because what we were doing here is, before we were talking about that whole piece of a meditation where you get absorbed. And what we're starting to do is say, can I get absorbed in another person? Can I pay such undivided attention that I'm not there? All right? So that what I do is I begin to react not out of my personality, but out of my intuition in terms of what is the right response at this moment. Most of us cannot do that because what we do is we have this head thing that gets in the way of us being intuitive. Oh, I can't say that. Okay, what do they think about that? And so what happens is we do not respond, all right, in that kind of spontaneous way. If what we do is we can really get connected with each other and be vulnerable with each other, be able to create a connection so that we don't have to be afraid. Most of us in our interactions with other people deep down are afraid. What are they going to think of me? How am I going to come off? All of that, again, is your personality speaking. Right? So what we want to do is we want to begin to at least start to look at how do we do this active listening process so that I'm really tuning into you, and not just tuning into you at an intellectual level, but tuning into you also at a feeling level. Do I hear what you are feeling? Do I have the ability to be able to connect vibrationally? Sometimes the messages that we give, that we speak, are different than the messages that we are giving in terms of our emotions. I'm not angry. Okay. How do you respond to that person? Right? You absolutely respond to the vibration of the energy. If you treat them like they aren't angry because that's what they said, it's not going to be very skillful means. So we've got to be connected enough that we can begin to really pick up, right, what's going on with the whole being of that person, not just the words that they're speaking. Okay? So we're going to develop a new sensitivity, and we're going to do kind of what's a people meditation. Okay? So the next exercise that I want to do, all right, is again back in your triad group, and we're going to stay on this theme of personality for a little while. Okay? So the first thing that I would like you to do is, as a triad, very quickly give each other feedback. You just had an experience with each other. Okay? Now, this is very hard to do because sometimes we have a whole lot of things that we want to say that we don't know how another person is going to respond to it. But what we want to do is, this is just all experimentation. Okay? This is just a laboratory that we're working in. And so what we want to do is we want to give first impressions. Okay? Feedback. What happened? All right? So this is a very quick exercise. I want to do it in 5 minutes. All right? You have 3 things to say to each of the 2 people in your group, or 2, or 7 or whatever it is, but just give them a how did I perceive you? Okay? So let's do that really quick, 5 minutes. All right, all of you get together, give feedback based on the experience. I perceived you in this way. Just a straight little quick feedback. Keep moving because there's a lot we still need to get done in order for this to actually make sense to you. Okay? Talk a little bit about feedback. Most of us are not very good at giving, and we're not very good at receiving feedback, okay? But feedback is actually what allows us to really improve, grow, and change, right? All feedback, please hear this, all feedback is good. Some feedback's relevant, but all feedback is good. If I give you feedback, even if it's entirely wrong and you would normally get defensive about it, the response that we should give to feedback always is thank you, okay? Because if nothing else, what the feedback does is it gives us an idea of how the other person sees us. It doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong. We don't even know, all right? Some feedback, all right, can be very relevant and can actually create insights for us because it's easier for people to see us oftentimes than it is for us to see ourselves. We're going to practice that, okay? Right? So what I would like to do in terms of the next exercise, again, we're going to do it in our triads because what we want to do is we want to go deeper with people. We want to be able to, again, kind of create some kind of a connection that allows you to feel better, all right, about your two partners in crime here, okay? All right? Because one of the things that happens is in our own self-development, again, we so often get caught in our own stuff that we just reinforce my development, and we don't have that ability to be able to really support other people in terms of their growth, right? This is an opportunity to be able, all right, to kind of say some things, connect, and begin to create that ability to really be able to be there for people at all levels. Not just the intellect, not just the stance that we give in terms of who we are, but also emotionally in terms of getting into a place to where we genuinely care. So exercise 2 is I want to start to look at, all right, your personality and what has been the good parts of your personality and what are the things that have gotten in the way for you. So you're going to be doing your own analysis of your personality with your two triad members, okay? So we're going to look at, all right, and this is just 5 minutes, do both of these, but think about 2 or 3 personality patterns that have really been a part of your success. Work hard. I'm very organized. I'm, really, I have the ability to stay focused. I am very gregarious and I get along well with people. Each of you have certain parts of your personality that are great strengths, okay? Can you identify those and share them with your triad? And then personality patterns that get in the way, that you know are there. I'm fearful, I don't take risks, I undermine myself some of the times. Begin to look at and share those. So it might be impatience. Maybe, you're not very good at working, at appreciating other people. Maybe, you're so driven that, you become assertive and aggressive. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're just going to do this exercise very quickly. 3 or 4 minutes, that's all we're going to take, all right? So it'll take 15 minutes. There are 3 of you. We'll give you 15 minutes. Afterwards, what we would like to do is also at the end of that, and by the way, the other people in the triad can ask questions, clarify, help the person to go deeper, right? So that this is, again, the ability to kind of give feedback. Wow, I understand that. Does it happen in this way? So it can be a little bit of a discussion around the person that's speaking. But at the end of that, I want you to find one limiting pattern of behavior, All right? One of those things that gets in the way of you being as effective a leader as you could be. All right? I want you to identify that and hold it. Okay? And then we move on to the next person. Then we move on to the next person. At the end of this, I'll give you a couple of minutes, and you can just briefly share your experience. Remember, timekeepers really depending on you to keep time. 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes. Okay? 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. If you can get it done earlier, great. All right, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes. That 2 minutes at the end is to just kind of clear things and connect as a triad. Okay? Great. Go. All right. We got 3 groups, 4 groups want 1 minute. 1 minute to wrap it all up, okay? 1 minute. We got a lot to do. Okay, everybody. We're going to have trouble pulling them back now. Okay, I'll tell you what let's do. Let's all take a great, big, huge breath. And again. And again. Great. And you see that kind of centers us again. We're going to use this a lot more when we begin to start to do the next exercise, which is emotions. But I want to go back to this practice model because all this is about practice. And what you all just did was a couple of exercises in terms of beginning to work with personality and to be in a place to where we begin to look at personality. We look at ourselves and we begin to see different. So that personality is here. We take a couple of steps back. We become self-reflective. If we go back to that brain diagram, what happens is when we take those 2 steps back and we become self-reflective, we actually move to a different part of the brain. We move to the midfrontal lobe, where there is consciousness. Remember, where we have our personality stored is in the place in the cortex where the autonomic functions are. This is a big simplification in neurobiology, by the way, but it works as an analysis. All right? But what happens is we now move to midfrontal lobe, and we are conscious. We can make decisions. Now, what that looks like real time for us is that you're all very busy being who you are. You're not conscious, and you, for 80-90% of your behaviors, you do not make decisions about your behaviors. You behave based on what's programmed in your personality. So you're just kind of going through the motions, right? And you respond in different ways based on your likes and dislikes, fair and just, shoulds and shouldn'ts. All of those dualities you are responding to, and it's already pre-programmed. So you do not make conscious choices in behaviors by and large, all right? You are a product of your personality. What we do when we take that 2 steps back is we create a distance between us and our personality. If I have that distance, then a behavior arises. Maybe I'm that rude and aggressive guy. All right, if I'm over here in observer mode, I can actually see that. If I'm in personality, okay, if I'm being myself, that behavior arises, but I'm so identified with it, it's me, right? There's no consciousness. There's no room there to make a choice in terms of the behavior because it just arises out of what that programming is that we are building in terms of personality. Now, right now, for all of you, because of your age and experience, your personality is not formed. It's not concretized yet. It's formed, okay? It started forming in terms of your subconscious personality, started about age 12. Your unconscious personality started when you were born. But you did not gain the ability to have cognition. Cognition is being able to see yourself until you're about 12, maybe 10, 11, 12 years old. That's when it begins to start to kick in, and you can start to choose new behaviors and kind of program those in. Now, some of you have already been programmed in because of parents and different people in your lives that have been important, and different things and experiences that you've had have actually shaped, all right, who you think you are, and you've put that into your brain. And now what we're doing is we are trying to look at personality in a little bit different way. If what we want to do is we want to be fluid, flexible, open to change, we need to be less attached to who we think we are. If we're less attached to who we think we are, if we know less, we actually are going to be more responsive in the present moment, because your personality is all based on past. It's not based on now. One of the things that as we begin to become more aware and mindful, what we want to do is to be right now in this moment and not bring our biases and our old judgments and our old experience into the present moment, because what that does is it means that we're reacting out of the past, we're not reacting now. Now, here's where it gets tricky, okay? If you think you're in the past, you already have moved away from the experience of your life, and you're no longer in experience anymore. You are instead in your thoughts about the experience of your life. Let me give you an example. We go on vacation and we see a beautiful view, right? And we go, wow, what a beautiful view. But the minute that we go in our mind, wow, what a beautiful view, we are no longer actually physically experiencing the beautiful view. We are experiencing our thought about the beautiful view. Now, thoughts only come, they don't come in singles, they come in trains, and so then we go, well, maybe it's not that beautiful a view. The Grand Canyon was better than this. Or if they cut that tree down, it sure would be a lot more beautiful. Or we begin to do that whole mind thing that we do, which is that internal dialogue tends towards the negative. And now what we're doing is our experience is being created by that internal dialogue and by our intellectual mind. And we are outside of direct experience. We've lost the experience. Remember when I said that we oftentimes, when we have success, we don't stay with that feeling of success so that we program that into our being so that we have much more access to that. Instead, what we do is kind of quickly push it away because we don't stay in emotions long enough. Now, emotions are in a different, go back to that brain, emotions are in a different part of the brain. They're in the limbic brain system. All right? There is no language in the limbic brain system, but it's where most of your decisions are made. Okay? Now, we think we make decisions rationally and logically. But in actuality, ask any advertiser, they're not going to appeal to your logic and your rationale. They're going to appeal to your emotions. That's what sells. That's when you actually make decisions. Right? Now, what we do is we're all closet intuitives. We actually make those decisions in the limbic brain, but we very quickly create a rationalization that is logical, all right, as to why we made that decision. Okay? But the decision was actually made, okay, at a feeling level, right? Now, if what we can do is we can begin to lessen all of that internal dialogue chatter that's based on who you think you are, which, by the way, is an illusion. And, you know, how many of you have gotten feedback from somebody and gotten defensive? Raise your hand, right? Everybody has, right? Right? All of us, okay? What are we defending? What are we defending when we get defensive because somebody... We're defending the illusion of personality, okay? All right? You need to see me as I think that I am, right? Not see me as who I really am. So we construct, it's like constructing a cardboard cutout and saying, this is me. And the real, authentic me, okay, doesn't get accessed, right? The only thing that gets accessed is this personality. One of the things we wanted to do is begin to start to create a distance so that as you went through and say, wow, what parts of my personality actually contribute to my success? Wow, great. Let's reinforce those. Which are the parts of my personality that actually get in the way of my success? What can we do with those? We can create a practice, right, that begins to allow us to see that that's just illusion and I can change that part of my personality. It used to be in psychology that we thought that once you had a personality, it was a given and you were stuck and that was the end of it. And you basically just had to do the best you could with the personality that you kind of ended up with. We've now really understood at a very deep level that we can do all kinds of things and relearn new things and recreate all kinds of different things in our own personality at any point. All right? We know that we can change this brain in all kinds of ways. We can physically change the brain. We can make it softer, more fluid, and create more neuroplasticity, so that it means that, as we get older, our brains have a tendency to get harder, to calcify. All right? And what we need to do is kind of shake it up and exercise and create new neural pathways and think differently and be different and do all kinds of things that stimulate us in all kinds of ways that begin to exercise the neurons in our brain in all kinds of new and different ways. Right? That is a challenge for all of us, is to stay in the place to where we create a broader and bigger and more expanded personality. Look, one of the things that we often do, and this is especially true for coaches, my profession, we identify dysfunctional behaviors, and then what we do is we replace it with a new behavior, all right? And so what we do is we kind of take personality and we shift it so it's a little bit more effective, but we still stay addicted to personality. What I'd like you to think about, okay, we're going to use the thinking mind to destroy the thinking mind, but to begin to say, what does it look like if I'm not so attached to who I am, right? If I can now be more fluid and flexible and be different, all right, in different situations. When we take a look at this diagram, we see personality and then we move to observer. The first thing we're observing is self. But if we take that same lens and we begin to look at other people and we begin to see them as personalities, okay? Absolutely consistent in terms of their behavior. Most people are not going to change. Most people are not conscious. They're stuck. They do not create this level of consciousness that you have available to you, all right, so that you actually can watch. You can be that observer. By the way, it's very easy to be the observer. All that you have to do is just not judge. That's it. All right? Every time you judge another person, you are inserting your personality into the game. You're right, you're wrong, you're good, you're bad. All right? You're the arbitrator of truth. You become God at that point. Okay? This is the way it is. And when you make those judgments, then you have a tendency to see that which confirms your judgment. Right? So you're stuck. You're right back in personality. When you judge, there is no observer. There is a judger. Right? And we move back into the personality. We are no longer in mid-frontal lobe. We are no longer conscious. Right? Now, if what we can do is we can observe people without judging, we begin to see them differently. We begin to see what is the things that they get excited about. What are their passions? What are their hot buttons? What makes them angry? How can we influence them? Who influences them? How do they influence them? We can predict behaviors. We see what the value proposition of that person is. We also see what the development issues are. Now, we can have perceptions about people, but perceptions are different than truth. All right? When we make a judgment, we're judging. All right? If I have an opinion and I'm attached to that opinion and I think it's truth, then what you have a different one, we're going to butt heads and we're going to argue truth. It's much more effective in terms of our connection and communication with other people if what we do is share perceptions. If I don't know, I can give you my perception of who you are. I can give you that feedback and say, here's what I picked up from you. Hey, but what do I know? Okay? But that can be something that's very valuable for you. That can be something that makes a difference and gives you an insight into yourself that you wouldn't have had. Sometimes feedback isn't that dramatic. But when we begin to have the ability to share perceptions without judging, it creates a whole different level of connection with the important people in our lives. And we begin to understand that then if I know how to influence you because I see other people doing it, and I know your personality, I can shift and change my personality because I'm conscious, right? I'm not stuck in a personality, so I can be who you need me to be in order to help you, all right, to be more aware, to be more connected, to begin to influence. Leadership, all right, in an organization is about influencing people. Now, if I can speak your language, I'm going to be much more apt to influence you. If I know what you love and I begin to talk to you about that, okay, then what happens is there's a connection between the two of us. That connection is what we call significance, okay? Now, significance is pretty easy. If you walk in and you have a meeting with somebody and you walk out of that meeting, and when you walk out of that meeting, you go, wow, that was a great meeting, all right? And you know, and by the way, you know physically, it's something that you feel that the meeting was great for the other person. Have you ever had that experience where you just walked out and you know you had a connection? How many people have had that? All of you have had it, right? Come on, get your hands up here, right? Significance. And we walk away. We don't have to ask the other person. We just know it clicked. And what happened when it clicked, right? We kind of get in a vibrational sync with people, all right? There's a synchronicity. There's something that happens. And we connect in a very real way. And when we do that, all right, something magic happens. And it's something that is like it's passed on. It's like you say something and then they say, but emotionally, there's a linkage, and we can feel that kind of energy kind of moving and flowing with the people that we're interacting with. That's what we want to do, is we want to create significance with other people, all right? We can do that by being less attached to our personality so that we're more fluid and flexible. We're not rigid and stuck in a very narrow framework of how we see things, and we don't get fundamental. We don't get truth, and we have a fluidity and a flexibility. Look, at a certain level of consciousness, okay, we have a world that is filled with religious strife, okay? At a certain level of consciousness, there is no religion, okay? It fails to be an issue. It disappears in all of it. It's all about, it doesn't matter what, it universalizes, okay? We get to a place to where we understand that this is all about, all right, learning to live a life that is less selfish and more wholesome. And whatever it is that is the belief system that helps you to be able to manifest those behaviors and that way of feeling and that way of thinking, then that's great for you, all right? And we don't have to impose this so that it just doesn't matter. It's whatever is useful for you, I support for you, right? We create a consciousness that's much more universal. Now, we've talked about the observer personality in terms of being conscious, but we haven't talked much about emotions. And one of the things that I want to do is to just give you a little bit about what emotions are, how they work, and then we're going to do an exercise in our triad again that has to do with emotions. Okay? So the The issues are that we also have emotional patterns, most of which are in our unconscious mind, okay? And this is the mind that comes from there are certain situations and we react differently to those situations. So if you grew up in a household that had danger in it, you might respond to that danger by being aggressive, or you might respond to it to be passive, but all of those kind of reactions to emotions, all right, are going to begin to create a emotional personality for you, all right? So you respond to external events in different ways. There's also a part of emotions that is just simply, all right, a balancing mechanism for us physiologically and psychologically. So emotions arise, okay? We feel those emotions, and then they go away. And then they arise, another one arises, we feel it, and they go away. Another one arises, we feel it, we go away, okay? That's a process that's going on. The problem is that in our heads, we begin to monkey with that, okay? We monkey with it by, first of all, trying to understand what we feel, and then we also have a personality that's decided that some emotions are good and some emotions are bad, okay? So when I feel sad, oh, that's a bad emotion, right? I do two things. One is I label that emotion. I actually feel something. I don't know what it is, but the minute I put the sad label on it, okay, then what happens is it becomes something different. It starts to be what my head thinks that sadness feels like. I'm no longer in the emotion. I am in my thoughts about the emotion the minute that I label the emotion. And then because I think some emotions are good and some emotions are bad, I actually try to talk myself out of certain emotions. I wake up in the morning and I'm, again, depressed. Well, there's no depression that you've ever felt in the morning that was the same as the one that you maybe are going to feel the next time you feel it, okay? These things just happen, okay? Then what happens is we go into that and we can then do this whole thing about, oh, I wake up this morning and I'm feeling depressed. Oh, I shouldn't feel depressed, okay? And then we go through the litany of our lives saying, well, you know, gee, I've got a nice boyfriend and I've got and I'm doing well in my studies and my parents are wonderful and my life is good and so I can't possibly be depressed. And so we begin to pretend like we're not depressed, okay? Right? We disconnect from what we're feeling. If we do that, our interactions with people lose the ability for us to be able to connect at any kind of emotional level. All right? Because we're disconnected from our emotions. What we need to do is, as those emotions arise, I wake up in this morning and I feel depressed, what we really want to do is we want to be okay with and not label it depressed. I feel like, and what actually does this feel like? Okay? Where is it? How big is it? Does it have a color? Is it located up or is it located down or is it located where? And we be okay with that emotion. And we live our day with that emotional lens. So maybe if I'm feeling that way, I go out and I'm much more in tune in my external environment with other people that are feeling pain. Okay? I can pick it up. I certainly don't have a big ego because big egos don't go with that feeling. But I'm allowing that feeling to balance me, to bring me back into harmony. And then what happens is your experience with all the feelings is that they come, they stay as long, and then they get us balanced and they go. Now, we can also, though, take that emotion and we can feed it with our internal dialogue. Oh my God, I'm depressed. Okay, all right? And then, oh, well, this is terrible, and what am I going to do, and da-da-da-da-da. And we can stay depressed as long as we want because, again, what we've done by being depressed about being depressed is we've made it a head emotion. We don't have to feel it, by the way. We only feel it in our head, which means that we control it. The personality is still in control, right? So we don't ever actually really deal with that balancing mechanism in terms of the emotions. So what we want to do is we also want to be able to, just exactly like we did with personality, to begin to kind of put this together, all right, so that we start to look at our emotions. Now again, I just talked to you, the minute we label emotion, it makes it a head emotion. So what we want to do is we want to just check in and we want to say, am I expanded? Or am I contracted? Now, most of the people that I work with that are corporate executives, one of the main issues that they come to me for is most of them are running on adrenaline energy. It is energy that comes from that work hard, okay? Be successful, then you can be happy, but everybody's actually working hard, all right? And they're ambitious, and that's all they do. And they do that by scaring themselves. Oh my God, if I don't get this done, then I'm going to fail, and I'm going to be terrible, and da-da-da. And so what we do is we use adrenaline energy as the energy that motivates us. It is probably an okay energy to use when you're young and trying to prove yourself, but it actually is an energy that has a whole lot of negatives, okay? What we want to do is to use much more of the energies where we feel expanded, connected. And in fact, even adrenaline energy, if you expand it, can actually be quite wholesome. It's the difference between pressure and stress and challenge, okay? It's the same continuum, but if we allow and kind of take that fear-based energy, breathe into it, see it as something good, we can expand that so that we're still feeling it, but we're feeling it in an expanded way. And so one of the things that we do as a practice is to begin to kind of take a look at, am I contracted or am I expanded? And can I then expand some of the contracted emotions, all right? So that what happens is I can let them basically do their work. So what we want to do in this exercise is to go back to your, and choose a new facilitator, all right? Each person, this is your timekeeper, each person has 5 minutes. And we want to look at mental and emotional and physical indicators of feeling, okay? Where does that take place? How does that, we're looking at the emotions in your life. We're going to basically do this analysis, okay? Calm breath, you kind of make jokes, you're more creative, you listen to others, you're less judgmental. I mean, I've got a 15-year-old daughter, and believe me, she can do expansion and contraction 5 times in a half an hour, okay? It goes up and down and up and down and up and down. And are we watching that? Because what happens when we contract, okay, so we have a whole different set of emotions that begin to come in. As we're doing this internal work, we want to be able to check in and just look at, am I contracted or am I expanded? One of the things that we've been working on with this little breath, which is the is that can help us take a contracted emotion, and we still feel the emotion, we're still in it, but if what we do is we put a little in it, it begins to expand. We then take a look at your contractions, when you get short with communication, when you tense your shoulders, impatience, when you get annoyed. What does that feel like? We want you to do an analysis of that in terms of your own internal process. And then you can use your triad members to help you deepen that, to help you to begin to understand this idea of contraction and expansion. Okay? These are things that we're going to work on. And then take one of those that you notice, okay, one practice, all right, that you identify in terms of, here's a situation that creates contraction for me. It's sometimes a situation, sometimes it's a person, all right? When I go home and see my mother, whoop, contraction, okay? When I see my father, expansion, okay? All right? And these are patterns. What we want to do is watch what's happening in those patterns so that if we know we get contracted with our mother, we know that that's probably not going to do anything because we're disconnected from her. We can start to create strategies as to how can I open up a little bit and create a different level of relationship. But we can't do that unless we're noticing this level of expansion and contraction. Because when you're contracted, All right? You have no ability to be empathetic to the person that you're with. There's no ability to be able to create significance in that relationship. It won't happen. If you go into your boss, you hate your boss, you're already contracted, probably not going to really kind of make that relationship better. Okay? So let's go back into our triads. Let's move into this exercise. This is a harder exercise to do because we're dealing with emotions, and we normally do not like to deal with emotions because it's too abstract for us. And especially if you're really good at cognitive and rational kinds of things, emotions then become territories that are a little bit more complicated to work with. So let's see if you can kind of do this in the more complicated form. We're going to take, and this is 15 minutes and 2 minutes, and so we will go until about 8 minutes after, okay? All right, go for it. We started off by really listening to each other, by being able to kind of give some undivided attention. Then we gave some feedback, right? Based on, again, personality and kind of who we are and how we see and understand a little bit about feedback. Then we looked at our personality. We started to do analysis of our personality, and we looked at, gee, what are the strengths and what are some of the kinds of things where personality gets in the way for me? Then we looked at the patterns of emotions. It's what we just did in terms of your personality. So we're beginning to just do that analysis to begin to kind of uncover and see. And you can do this more and more in depth. You begin to get more fine-tuned in terms of who you are and what the emotional patterns are. In the next thing, what we want to do is we want to bring all of this together. And we actually want to create a space where it gives you something to take back with you that is a practice. So you put all of this together and you say, gee, after doing that analysis, here's the kind of thing that I would like to work on. So what we want to do is, and let me see if I can find that little clicker. It's missing. Can you bring up the next slide? It'll be around here somewhere. Can you bring up the next slide? Is it there? Maybe it dropped. Ah, here it is. Got it. Okay, I got it. Great, thank you. Yeah, look at, for the contraction that you're in, all right? You know, when you were looking at kind of what are those things that create contraction, one of the things that you can do is that breath. And it's a really important one in terms of your practice to just be able to take that breath. It's just the and do that at those times where what you want to do is you want to trade contraction for a little bit more expansion. All right? It's one of those things that if you take nothing else away, just take away today that sense of when I'm feeling contracted, when I'm stressed, if I can just do 3 of those breaths. Let's do them 3 right now. 1. Okay. And then what I want to do is to just begin to look at how do we put all of this together into a practice. So I want you to do one more work with your team, your triad team. And what we want to do is, and this doesn't, by the way, take very long because you've already established some of the things that you want to work on. So it's go into that group, get a new time facilitator, but I'll do this one because this one doesn't take a lot of time. But based on the whole session, all 3 so far, but this is the 4th time that your triad's gotten together, put those together and say, okay, based on that, what's one area of development that you want to work on in terms of lessening your attachment to a personality pattern? It can be emotional, or it can be behavioral, or it can be a combination of both. But I want you to identify. We identified one before when we were working on personality. We've now kind of added to that what happens in terms of our emotional programming. We want to use both of those. And we want to say to my triad partners, wow, I've been thinking about this and I would like to work on this. Okay? Then what we're going to do is you're going to ask for 2 or 3 suggestions from your triad friends, all right, as to how I can work, your opinion and how I can work on this issue, okay, during the next 30 days. And what we're going to do is we're going to put a time limit on this, but we want you to be conscious, all right, for the next 30 days. And your 2 triad partners can give you some ideas. They're going to be creative. And again, it doesn't make any difference what they say. Some of it will be useful, some of it will be useless, but it's still really good feedback, and you thank them, all right, for giving you their opinion. Okay? So what we've got is no evaluation, no ranking, no response, just say thank you, and then we move to the next person. So that what we're doing is we're beginning to get ideas about a development issue that we want to work on. And then we're going to put that in a practice framework, and then you can take that home with you along with a few other tools that we'll go into really quickly, like how do you create significance, how do you do, but these are just straight tools. So if you can kind of go back into your groups, this won't take long. It's just 2 or 3 ideas so that we can probably do this in about, let's try to do it in, say, 8 minutes, okay? That gives you a couple of minutes each, but just identify what you would like to work on in terms of your personality, and then ask your 2 other triad members, all right, to give you feedback as to what they think you might do in the next 30 days. That's it, okay? And then you say thank you, and you'll take that back and work with it, but allow them, all right? And it's a creative process for them too, because we all do, well, what would I do if I wanted to work on that? So it's actually you actually doing a self-analysis, but that also is really useful to your partners. Okay? Go. Okay, let's do that breath once more just so that I can kind of go, okay? So, And while we're doing that, I'd also like you to really appreciate your other triad members, okay? This is about connection with people, and it's about really kind of having the ability to be able to to work together and to do things and to get to know each other. And as this conference goes on, I hope that you keep the connections with some of the people that you've made this afternoon and are able to kind of come back and say, wow, that speaker, and I felt this way about it, and that made me contracted, and am I kind of watching myself and seeing where personality gets in the way and where it doesn't. Yeah, thank you, dear. I'm getting old. What I want to do in terms of the last little bit here is to look at your practice. So if you identified something and you got from your triad partners, if you got a little bit of information and you said, wow, maybe I can try that, and oh, that sounds like a good idea, and wow, and then what we do is we begin to put this into a practice. And it's pretty simple. This is just, what will you practice? Define it, okay? Now, you can look at all kinds of different development issues, and I'm going to give you all of the development issues that I see as a coach that you need to watch out for. So there are 24 of them. You'll at least have 5 or 6 of those that you can put on this list. Don't do that. We just want you to be conscious about one, okay? Just work on something. Everybody that works at Team Up, everybody that works at ALI has to have a practice. And they have to be able to talk about what they are practicing at any given moment. In every meeting, we open up with, how's your practice going? What are you doing that is a part of your development process so that we as a community keep each other honest, all right? And we support and help each other in the practices that we're doing to become better human beings, to actually have a bigger impact in the way that we want in terms of how we are directing the work that we do. So take a look at what is that practice, define it for yourself. Who are you going to do that practice with? And who does it, what happens if we talk about, gee, I know that I get angry and annoyed when I'm around my mother. Well, then we got mother there, okay? All right, or boyfriend, or father, and these things ebb and flow, so your practice is constantly changing. But we begin to define it in terms of the people that are the end result of some of the things that we hold emotionally or behaviors that we have. And then what am I going to do in terms of this practice? How often am I going to do it? Am I going to kind of put a little reminder up so that in the mornings I'm going to do something? And again, all of this is just simply about remembering to be more conscious. It's just putting little memory hooks in there. Reminders and triggers. Do I know, can I remind myself, and do I know the triggers? Do I know what makes me annoyed? All right, you can be in a relationship with a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and you will find that in a conversation something will come up and it'll be a trigger, and boom, you'll see a whole emotional reaction take place just based on a few words that were said that probably had no meaning at the time for the other person, but set something off in you, okay? Are we aware enough that we begin to see those things, or do we allow that to create discord in the relationship? So do we know our triggers, and do we have reminders built in so that we remember that we want to do this practice? If you have trouble with your mother, one of the things that you can do is a little meditation practice. You picture your mother in your mind, and you just practice being loving, okay? Right? Now, if you can't do that because your internal dialogue says, well, I'm not going to love my mother, she's a creep, okay, okay, all right, right? That's your issue, and you need to work on that issue. But if what you can do is just develop that, even if you've got a niggle in your relationship with your mother, the next time you see her, you've practiced that, and maybe that comes up. Maybe that shifts the dynamic in the relationship. These things, you guys, are very subtle, but they make a huge difference. And then look at who is going to support you in terms of that practice and who's going to help remind you. You build a community with that. And those are the things that actually begin to help us to be consistent in terms of our own development process. A practice is quite important. We talked about significance, and when we're working with people, it's how do we create that level of connection. And that connection takes place not just in terms of intellectually in the mind and that we agree with each other and we reinforce each other's truth. That is not what a real friendship is about. That is not what a real connection is about. Real connection is about heart. It's about that significance. It's about finding that place to where we just kind of connect and we know we connect. All right? And we can do that if we're fluid and flexible so that we're the conscious people that can change our behaviors and learn to speak the language of other people so that we can influence them in the way that is appropriate to them. If we can do that, all right, then what happens is we actually are creating continuously those significant relationships that help other people to become more conscious. And we're doing it without judging. We're doing it because we care. Significance is more important than outcome. When most of you go into a meeting with another person, you actually have an outcome in your mind that you want to achieve. And so actually what you're doing is you're trying to manipulate to that outcome, all right? So that you can't possibly create significance because you're not paying any attention except for you getting the outcome that you want. I maintain that if you create a significant relationship with that person, it will get you a series of outcomes that are much greater than the one that you would have gotten when you tried to manipulate your way through. Create significance, okay? And what happens is that then you get an ongoing, perpetual relationship that actually is much more connected. Now, it's very hard to do that because we all have judgments. I don't like him. Right? He's a jerk. And then what we do is we try to make that reality true. All right? We begin to get so caught up in all of these goods and bads and shoulds and shouldn'ts and wants and don't wants and fair and just and all kinds of things that we just become these judgmental people. All right? And that's what happens when we're not conscious. I'm challenging all of you to be more conscious and to try to create significance in as many relationships as you can. And I hope in your triad today you've created some significance. All right? That we find that working in our online program where we work in groups of 3, and this is a 10-week program where people do prep work and then they spend 90 minutes, but your triad is facilitated by a facilitator. We find that that's an incredible environment for those 3 people to make real transformations in their lives and real transformations in the lives of each other, right? So if we want to do significance, and these I said I was going to give you tools, okay? Here's my toolbox for you, okay? And this is quick. We're going to do this quick, and then we'll let you go. I know this has been a long session. Ways to build significance. Appreciation, okay? Just say thank you. I really appreciate you. We do be grateful before every meal. And it's not something that is like saying a prayer or something like that. It's feeling grateful. It is a meditation. Can I feel something for 45, 50 seconds without having my head go, oh, well, this is stupid, or, oh, okay, and it drifts off to something else that I need to do, or, and so can we just create that concentration of just sitting before a meal and spending 45 seconds being grateful? But that means feeling grateful without interrupting that with a mental internal dialogue. Now, I bet you most of you can't do it. But if you practice, you get better and better at it. And in that practice, what you do is it makes it much easier for you to be grateful, for you to say thank you. And if you want to create significance, go in and say to your boss, go in and say to your boyfriend, go in and say to your mother, thank you. I really appreciate you for this. Okay? Another one is ask for help. This is an interesting one because, we're these people that know everything and, we've got it all together, and so we don't want to ask for help, okay? That means that I'm needy and that I can't do everything myself. what happens, and this is counterintuitive, we know this is in psychology. If I help you, okay, all right, if I ask you for help, okay, and you help me, okay, you will like me more and I will like you less. It's counterintuitive, right? The person that helps you will like you more, but you will like them less, unless you're conscious, okay? Because what happens is that the person that helps someone is making an investment in them, okay? And they feel really good about being able to help. But if I have to ask for help, I got to go, gulp, okay, I need help, okay? Right? And most of us do that against our personality's wishes, all right? And when we do that, we usually feel a sense of obligation that gets into being a niggle in that relationship, okay? And so if we're conscious and we're not going to like you less if you help me, I'm going to like you more, it's a win-win for everybody. It's a positive conspiracy. I say, hey, look, you're significant. If I say, look, will you help me out with this? This is really important. Let's you and I do this and maybe we can accomplish this. And you go, oh yeah, wow, okay, I'll do that. Asking for help also means that we don't know everything and that we need help from the people around us. It's a very powerful tool. Recall a positive experience. Have any of you got friends that you haven't seen for 5 or 6 years and then you get together, and when you get together, the first thing you do is you start to talk about, hey, do you remember when so-and-so did this, and we remember when we did that, and all of a sudden what happens is you connect at that significance level like you were just best friends 5 years ago, and the 5 years is gone, but you're right there. Because that personal experience gets reshared together and creates that significance. So you want to create significance with people, go back to a positive experience or a success, right? The more personal we are, the more connected we are. You know, if we ask about someone's, mother that's sick or brother or child, or what it does is it begins to create a human connection. Okay? Humor. Right? When we laugh together, it's actually any emotion. Any emotion that you can share with another person puts you on the same emotional wavelength. It's why empathy is so powerful. All right? Empathy is the ability to be able to feel what another person is feeling, to go there. Right? You don't need to do anything. You just need to go there, because when I am feeling sad or upset, I'm feeling alone. But if somebody comes and just is there with me in that feeling, that in and of itself raises the level of the connection. Empathy is the most powerful thing for a therapist. Okay? The therapists that are really successful are the therapists that have learned to be empathetic in terms of other people. And we've done study after study. It doesn't make any difference whether you're Freudian, Jungian, NLP, whatever it is. The techniques make no difference. What creates a really good therapist is the ability to be able to connect emotionally. And when you do that, all right, that creates that space. Being vulnerable is so powerful in terms of creating connections with other people, all right? Because again, remember, we're locked in this fear thing, right, that doesn't allow us to connect with people because we're afraid to say what we really are. We're afraid to show who we really are because we're all basically afraid of rejection. What we really want is that undivided attention. Sorry, take responsibility. Do you know you can apologize no matter what the situation is? Okay? And it's very powerful. Right? If somebody is really upset at you and thinks that you've done wrong, even if you don't think you've done wrong, you can say, I am sorry you feel that way. Okay? I have watched in situation after situation that just I am sorry that you feel that way, all right? That's the apology, and all of a sudden they let go of all of that negativity and say, oh, okay, it's all right. All right? It's just, I'm sorry you feel that way. They're looking for, most of us are looking for a way out of our bad feelings anyway. Express a concern. Right? Oftentimes, you'll go into, with my clients, somebody will go into their boss and they will have a conversation and they will realize that the boss isn't there. And so they'll go, whoa, it seems like you're kind of not here in the room. Is anything wrong? Right? Showing a concern. And it might be that their kid was arrested for drunk driving last night, and the only real significant thing that they want to talk about in that moment is that. And then that's your mating. It's not what you brought in with you. It's not the decision that you needed. Maybe that comes at the end, maybe that doesn't come at all, but it creates significance. And oftentimes, we continue to have a conversation with people when we know that they're really not there. Okay? And if we said, wow, are you just kind of not here? That would begin to bring the whole thing back into significance. Positive regard and respect. If you're working with people and you don't like them, you've got work to do. All right? It does not matter who that person is. If you want to connect with them in any significant way, you're going to have to find some way to create some kind of positive regard. Okay? They may be jerks, they may be doing things that you don't like, you may be making, but by the way, all of those are usually judgments. Okay? All right? But you got to find something, all right, that can allow you to connect with that person, because you will not connect with an emotion that is negative, because subconsciously they will pick that up, and then there will be a back away or even a defensive vibration that will come. Right? So again, positive regard. If you cannot get positive regard, okay? And by the way, there are a lot of challenging people out there in terms of positive regard. Right? If you can't get it, then go to compassion. Okay? All right? And compassion is not pity. Okay? It's not feeling sorry for someone. All right? It's actually feeling for someone. Okay? It's a difference. And the last one is really the most important. It's where we started. Remember when I said in that listening exercise, what we're really trying to do is to give each other undivided attention. To connect enough with each other so that we get absorbed and it's not me anymore, I'm just a reflection of you. When we do that, we have transcended our personality. We don't have any self. That is the ultimate of self-reflection. Right? We've gotten to a place to where we're just in this moment and we are responding intuitively to the people that we are interacting with. That's the things that will help you to create significance in relationships. Humor is, by the way, any emotion can go there. Love can go there. Caring, genuine caring can go there. These are principles of engagement, and I throw these in because when we work with people and when we connect with people, these are little things that we can use that begin to make a difference in terms of how we interact with people in our lives. We use these as kind of the way that a triad works together, all right? So one of the things is that we need to accept any situation that we're in and then act. Okay, so it's accept and act. The world will not conform to you. Okay, all right? Doesn't work that way. All right, the world is just the world. And what you need to do is to be okay with whatever is happening in your world, even if it's tragedy, because remember, tragedy has a value. We learn from the tragedies that are in our lives. And as we learn in those tragedies, all right, that's where our growth comes. It'd be pretty boring if we didn't have suffering, if we didn't have, we would not have the ability to be able to grow and learn. But what happens with a lot of us is when the situation isn't the way that we want it, we have a tendency to go into bitch and moan, okay? Oh my God, that teacher is a mess. I hate him. He assigns way too much stuff. I don't like what he's doing. Oh yeah, I don't either. And what we do is we create significance by bitching and moaning together. We give each other a space that allows us to complain and allows us to basically suck all the energy out of what we're doing. When that happens, what we do is we just say, hey, it is what it is. And you've got to accept what is, you can't change it, and then decide what action you're going to take in relation to that, right? And so if you kind of have that in your mind when you're kind of going through your life and something happens that you don't like and you go, well, okay, come on, it is what it is, all right? And I have to adapt and adjust. How am I going to do that? But if what I do is I stay in bitch and moan, I'm going to take all the energy out of that. And certainly teams often do that. Friends often do that. When one friend isn't there, your other group of friends begin to bitch and moan about the other friend, and you begin to suck the energy out of your interactions with other people. We've talked about this all the way through, that when we get into that place to where we are the arbitrators of truth, all right, then we get into that judgment space. If what you do is you can make your statements, but you say, in my opinion, or you say, hey, but what do I know anyway? Or you say, does that make sense to you? What we do is we qualify it so that we do not come off as being the arbitrators of truth. When I say, in my opinion, what it does is it reminds me that I'm not the arbitrator of truth, and it invites you to give me your opinion, okay? And if you've got somebody that's kind of pounding the podium and saying, this is the way it is, and we have to do it this way, and you see that every day, okay? All right? Caught in their truth, you can just look at them and say, come on, in your opinion, right? Reminding them, all right, to be more conscious. Stop defensiveness. And by the way, defensiveness is automatic, okay? All right? When somebody comes at you emotionally and they're angry or annoyed or so, automatically you go into defensiveness. When defensiveness comes up, whether it's with your friends, whether it's in your working groups, whether it's at school, wherever it is, when defensiveness arises, please stop. No communication takes place. And I have watched this thousands of times in thousands of different situations. The only thing that happens when you continue a conversation when defensiveness arises in either party is that what happens is that people solidify their position and dig in even harder. Okay? That's all that happens. So when you see defensiveness, just call a timeout. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's kind of break it up, come back, and we'll come back at this later. Remember, okay, that defensiveness, no communication. We have take responsibility for your anger. Usually this one is just, if you're angry, you're wrong. Okay, all right? Anger does nothing and goes nowhere. It is the junk food of emotions, okay? There is no rationale, all right, for anger, okay? It does not help anything. Certainly doesn't help the person that is angry. By the way, anger is always a head emotion. It is not a heart emotion. It doesn't arise. What arises is annoyance, and then our little tricky bugger personality has this internal dialogue that revs it up. Oh my, that guy's a real jerk, and what is that? Well, he shouldn't have done that, and he's no person, and I don't like that at all. And then what we do is we move it into anger, okay? No communication with anger, always time out. I had a teenage son who was hard, a difficult kid. All right, and the one thing that we had was if you're angry, you're wrong. He could push my buttons. I'd go off. I'm fairly conscious, so I can catch myself maybe after 30 seconds, but I still explode. All right, and then I'd go, oh, man, he got me. All right, and then I would walk, all right, get rid of my anger, come back, say, Torin, look, I'm sorry. All right, I got angry, no excuse for it. But we need to talk about what made me angry. Our best father-son communications came, all right, after the emotion had welled, we'd stopped, gone back. Now, because I did that with him, he wouldn't catch himself because he was young, and you think you're really important when you're young. You think you know it all. When we get older, we realize we don't. I hope you guys realize that sooner than I did, all right? But my son would go into his anger, but then I'd go, whoa, Torin, anger. If you're angry, you're wrong, time out. He would then go walk it off, come back, say, Pop, sorry I was angry, but you need to hear out why I was angry. I need to talk to you about this. Boom. All right, communication taking place. All right? Observation without judgment. I can't tell you how hard this is, you guys. All right? You're going to walk out of here and you're going to start judging. You're probably judging right now. Okay? When is this going to be over? All right? Just watch it. It's all you need to do is to just watch this stuff. Okay? All right? Positive regard. We already talked about that. All right? Take responsibility instead of blaming. Okay? All right? Taking responsibility is what leadership is all about. Anytime anybody gives you the ability to take responsibility, do it. Okay? Much more powerful to rather than say, well, the reason I didn't get it done was because, Lori didn't give me the stuff that I needed. All right? And it's much more positive to say, wow, I am sorry. I take responsibility. I didn't let Lori know that I needed to have this and how important it was. And when she didn't give it to me a day before, I should have gone to her boss or I should have done something. Take responsibility. That's what leadership is all about. All right? You're giving away your power. You're saying, I cannot control my external environment. Every time you blame, it's giving away your power. All right? Feedback and repeat back. We did a repeat back, remember, in that first session? Oftentimes, communication doesn't happen unless there's a repeat back. If I say something, this is really important, and I need to know that you've heard this, please repeat it back to me. 1/3 of the time, the repeat back is not accurate. 1/3 of the time. If we don't do a repeat back, we don't know that. We assume that somebody has got a message that they didn't get. Any important thing that you want to do, ask for a repeat back. Consultants do it all the time. They'll say, what's the problem in your company? And the CEO of the company will say, well, this, and this. And then they say, well, look, I need to make sure I've got that. Let me repeat it back to you. And then when I repeat it back, if you go, oh yeah, that's exactly what I said, perfect, now I know that communication is there. Repeat backs also create memory space, okay? Because we don't often do it, we remember that we've done it, and that means that we're actually going to remember that. And by the way, we're 10 times more apt to remember what we've spoken than what we've heard. So when we create somebody speaking it in a repeat back, they're going to remember it, okay? Provide attention or check out. Look, in a group like this, anytime that we are together with your friends, sometimes what happens is you get the feeling that even though I'm talking to you, you're not actually there. Okay? You've checked out. You've gone somewhere else. You're you're on the beach, or you're doing something else, and what we need to do is to be honest enough with each other in terms of our communication that we're able to indicate that we've checked out. And we're also able to pick up that somebody else is checked out, and we can be okay with that. All right? It's human, all right, to have our mind go in different places. But we need to monitor it. We need to look at it. And especially if we're working in a group like a triad, we need to remember, all right, that we need to be there for the other people. That undivided attention, putting attention onto the same thing, that's what makes the power of a group happen, right? And then just remember that most people are not conscious, okay? They're just being who they are. They're stuck in their own personalities, and so they don't choose behaviors. Don't get mad at somebody because they were rude to you or because they did something to you, or they're completely unconscious, right? Very seldom do I meet people that are mean. I meet people a lot that are ignorant, okay, all right? But they don't mean to hurt other people. They just have a program in terms of their personality, all right, that has abrasive parts to it, okay? They're not conscious. Don't treat them like they are conscious. That's you projecting you onto them. They don't know. So the other one that I want to leave you with, and this other one, are the lists. I've been doing now this since 1982, so 35, 40 years, okay? These are the career breakers. This is what I see every day in my practice, okay? All right? These are the things that are the behaviors that get in people's way in terms of success in their careers. And there they are. You're going to get this as a handout. Look at them, all right? Because these are the things that are 35 years of experience with people that actually have big blockages in terms of their career. A couple of them you might want some idea about, which is like the one over here that's adding too much value. Okay? Oftentimes CEOs and leaders and even you, because we think that we need to know everything, we will add value to something that actually detracts from the value. All right? We will take something that belongs to somebody else, and then because we want to make a little adjustment in it to show that our leadership is there, we actually make an adjustment that actually kind of screws it up and takes it away from that other person. It's much more common than you would think, where we just add too much value, begin to change too many things, and it would be just as good without our input. We need to know when to give input and when to say, wow, that's great, take it away. Okay? Any of these other of these that, if you have any questions about them, please let me know. And, my personal email address is there if any of you want to contact me at any point, talk about any of these things that you misunderstood, or if you want to explore Team Up as a possibility for you in terms of a program that just kind of begins to, with two other people, raise your level of consciousness, a little bit of a taste of what Team Up is like here, please feel free to contact me. And I can't tell you how much I've appreciated all of you, the work that you've put in, the ability. I actually think that the low points of our afternoon together were me talking. Because the energy in this room when you were talking, all right, when you were connecting, and I know that the triads that I was listening into, the work that was being done was really good. I hope for you it was useful. All right? Thank you.
tGELF, leading the change.